Get ready, because the truth about the horrible design of old French cars is crazier than any science fiction movie. You wanted to see ugly and bizarre machines, and that's exactly what you'll get today. This video shows how France tried to reinvent the wheel and failed miserably. It's a parade of metal monsters and glass bubbles. But one specific car built during a world war was an oven on wheels for the driver, and you'll see that now. The average driver expects a car to have 4 wheels and a logically positioned steering wheel. French engineers of the past seemed to ignore this basic rule of survival. They looked at metal and saw a blank canvas for bizarre experiments. Imagine a vehicle that looks like a metal egg cut in half. That's the 1942 L'œuf électrique. It was created during a time of war when gasoline was an impossible luxury. The design was futuristic, using 3 wheels with a giant glass dome. But there was a problem. The car was made of hand-beaten aluminum and plexiglass, making it an unbearable heat trap in the summer. The egg that defied the logic of modern roads. Paul Arzins was an artist, not a traditional automotive engineer. He wanted something lightweight that could roam occupied Paris without needing a drop of fossil fuel. The car weighed only about 198 kilograms, less than the weight of a modern grand piano. It ran on batteries and had a very short range. How did this happen? Back then, the need for transportation was so desperate that any crazy idea came to life. There's a detail about Arzens's vision for the future that seems straight out of a low-budget science fiction film, but I'll talk about that later. The design was so strange that people stopped in the street just to figure out if it was a car or a giant soap bubble. Pay attention to that. The L'œuf never went into mass production, remaining a unique gem of French strangeness. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel so you'll always receive updated content when it's posted. The creator believed that aerodynamics was the only law that mattered. Therefore, he ignored comfort and safety to create a silhouette that cut through the wind like a silver arrow, the pickup truck that hides a secret under the hood. Many know the Citroën 2CV as the people's car, simple and cheap. But the Sahara version took the madness to a new level of engineering. It was designed to tackle the sand dunes of North Africa. To ensure the car wouldn't get stuck, the French decided one engine wasn't enough. They installed 2 independent engines, one in the front and one in the back. It's not what you think. There wasn't a complex mechanical connection between them, just 2 systems working simultaneously. Why would they do that? The idea was to have 4-wheel drive in a rudimentary and functional way. If one engine failed in the middle of the desert, the driver still had the other to get home. But there's a problem. The driver needed to coordinate 2 gearboxes and 2 fuel tanks under the front seats. Imagine driving sitting on top of gallons of flammable gasoline while crossing a scorching desert. It's like sitting on a lit barbecue during a long Sunday drive. Stay with me until the end to understand how these design flaws changed history. The system was brilliant and solved the problem of traction on difficult terrain. But the production cost was double that of a normal model, and maintenance was a technical nightmare. Therefore, only about 700 units were manufactured, making it one of the brand's most expensive and bizarre collector's items today. The desert solution ended up being too complex for the real world. That vision of Arzens's future that I mentioned earlier involved entire cities covered by these tiny electric cars, something we're only really trying to do now. The 2CV Sahara proved that France wasn't afraid to bend the rules of physics and logic to achieve a goal, even if the end result looked like a luxury makeshift solution. In the end, the design was functional for the Sahara, but completely alien to any paved street in Europe or the United States. The Citroën DS is often called the most beautiful car of all time, but its engineering was a labyrinth of tubes and fluids. Launched in 1955, it looked like a land shark from another planet. The hydraulic system controlled everything: the suspension, the brakes, the steering, and even the gearbox. It's not what you think. It wasn't just a matter of comfort. It was an obsession with technology that no American had seen before. The car could rise and fall as if it were alive. Pay attention to this. If a tire punctured, the DS could balance on just 3 wheels and keep going as if nothing had happened. How did this happen? The air and oil suspension system was so advanced that it allowed the vehicle to ignore potholes that would destroy a Cadillac of the same era. But there's a problem. If the hydraulic fluid leaked, the car would become completely immobilized, without brakes and glued to the ground like a 2-ton rock, the suspension that floats like a cloud over the asphalt. The engineers wanted the DS to be the pinnacle of French luxury and aerodynamic design. Its drag coefficient was so low that it cut through the air with the ease of a hot knife through butter. The steering wheel had only one spoke, giving a clear view of the futuristic instrument panel. But complexity was a monster, hidden beneath the elegant metal. There's a detail about the DS's brake pedal that used to send novice drivers into a complete panic, but I'll talk more about that in a moment. What do you think of a car that doesn't have a brake pedal, but rather a rubber button on the floor? Comment below if you think you could brake precisely using just a sensitive button. Continue watching the video to find out which of these designs almost caused a diplomatic disaster. The technology was brilliant and changed the industry's comfort standard, but maintenance required mechanics who were almost space scientists. They were so highly trained. Therefore, the DS became a status symbol that only the very rich or the very brave dared to drive daily on the streets of Paris or New York. The car that looks like it was assembled backwards. The Renault Aventime is a modern example of how France has never lost its taste for the bizarre. It was launched in the early 2000s as a mix of minivan and luxury coupe. Imagine a huge vehicle with only 2 gigantic doors and a glass roof that opens completely. Why would it do that? Renault wanted to attract family men who still felt young and wanted a sporty style, but with the space of a school bus. The design was so angular and strange that it looked like a concept that escaped the showroom before it was finished. But there's a problem. The doors were so heavy and long that Renault had to invent a complex double hinge so they could open in tight parking spaces without hitting the cars next to them. It's like trying to open a bank vault door in a narrow corridor. Sales were a total disaster, with fewer than 9,000 units manufactured worldwide. That's less than the number of people in a small local baseball stadium. The DS brake button I mentioned earlier was so sensitive that a light touch would cause the car to stop abruptly, throwing passengers against the windshield if they weren't careful. The Aventime tried to be everything to everyone and ended up being nothing to anyone. Therefore, production lasted only 2 years before being canceled, leaving behind a trail of visual confusion. The solution for modern styling turned out to be a monumental marketing blunder that nearly sank the brand's reputation in the luxury segment. In the end, the Aventime remains a monument to French audacity in trying to reinvent the wheel, even when the wheel already works perfectly well. The Peugeot 1007 attempted to solve the problem of cramped cities with an idea that seemed brilliant on paper. It was a compact car that didn't have ordinary doors, but rather 2 gigantic electric sliding doors. Imagine a vehicle the size of a golf cart with the opening system of a modern delivery van. That's not what you think. The goal wasn't just style, but to allow the driver to exit the car in parking spaces where a newspaper could barely fit between vehicles. Pay attention to this. The doors could be opened by remote control even before you got near the metal. How did this happen? Peugeot invested billions to create a mechanism that was both safe and fast. But there was a problem. The electrical system was so heavy that it drained the battery and made the car as slow as a turtle carrying a backpack of rocks. The sliding doors for the uncertain future of cities. The engineers believed that the 1007 would be the king of urban centers like New York or Paris. The interior was customizable with color kits that the owner could change in minutes, like a cell phone case. But the practicality came at a high price in performance and fuel consumption. There's a safety feature of these doors at high speeds that scared any passenger, but I'll talk more about that in a moment. Would you dare to entrust your life to doors that only work with electricity and rails? Comment below if you think this innovation would make your life easier in the shopping mall parking lot. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel because it's free, and that way you'll always stay up to date with new videos. The technology was bold and solved the problem of lateral space, but the public found the car too expensive and too heavy for such a small engine. Therefore, sales were far below expectations, and the model was discontinued without a direct successor. The solution to the tight streets ended up creating a technological white elephant that nobody wanted to feed. That safety flaw I mentioned involved the fear that the doors would lock in an accident, leaving the occupants trapped inside a metal box without easy manual exit. The 10-wheeled monster that devoured tires on the asphalt. The pinnacle of French design and engineering madness goes by the name of Citroën PLR. It doesn't look like a car, but rather a metal centipede with 10 wheels and the size of a medium-sized cargo truck. It was built by Michelin to test truck tires at high speeds without the risk of tipping over a giant vehicle. The visual is terrifying. Almost 8 meters long, which is larger than 2 American popular cars lined up. Why would it do that? Michelin needed total stability to study how the rubber behaved at over 160 kilometers per hour. The car used 2 American-made V8 engines, sourced directly from Chevrolet to handle all the absurd weight. But there's a problem. The vehicle weighed about 10 tons, which is the same as 5 adult elephants trying to run on a test track. Pay attention to that. The test tire was hidden in the center of the chassis, protected by a fairing, while the 10 outer wheels kept the monster glued to the ground. It's not what you think. Despite having 10 wheels, only 4 of them were responsible for steering the vehicle, creating a bizarre driving dynamic. How did this happen? The need for precise data outweighed any aesthetic sense or resource economy. The design was purely functional and brutalist, looking like something out of a post-apocalyptic war movie. Therefore, the PLR fulfilled its technical role masterfully, even being one of the strangest objects ever seen on a road. The solution for the safety of future trucks was this engineering nightmare with 10 rubber legs.